So, welcome, Christy, to Irina's Avenue today. Thank you for joining me and for being willing to take us into the topic of resistance and
resilience. Thank you. I'm glad to be here. And when we talked about a topic that would be useful for people that had been through a major change, such as an ending of a relationship, I think different times there's different topics that are needed for different reasons. And the topic that came to me was first resilience, but also to go into it is, what do you gain to have resilience? What is required for resilience? So recognizing resistance, the value of resistance, the purpose of resistance, the actual experience that it brings, and then how that is part of resilience. When we talk about resilience, it's one of those things that we want to reverse engineer. So resilience is the end, and you can see it. What I like to do is have everybody just think first for a moment about someone highly resilient. Think about that person and then just take a minute and write down the qualities that you would use to describe that person when you think of them as being resilient, okay? Do you mind sharing some of the qualities?
so the person that popped in my head was my mom. And what comes up is kind, strong, loving, unstoppable, and compassionate.
That's beautiful. What I also like to do is to look at resilience when we are looking at things that we want to create in our life. One of the most valuable things we can do is to break it into small enough chunks to accomplish it. And so I like to take resilience and look at it as categories of resilience. We don't think of it in that way. We kind of generalize it. But what I have found is that there are some people that are very resilient physically. There are some people that are very emotionally resilient. There are some people that are very financially resilient. There are people that are very socially resilient. So there's all these different areas of resilience. What I like to do is find the area that you're strong in.
For me, the strongest type of resilience would be the emotional, that bounce back, that no matter what happens, no matter what life throws my way, I'm able to overcome, solve, resolve, and move forward in a better way.
Love that. So when we know that we have like a strong emotional resilience, what it can do is help us to recognize that we can use the bounty of that area to help fortify another area. So when you know that you're emotionally resilient, you can utilize that part of you to then work with the other side that we want to talk about, and where you have resistance. It's a lot easier for people to go into the idea of sorting out a resistance or an issue when they know they're already coming into it with some resources. It's kind of like preparing the mindset and your state when you're unveiling some things, those dark corners of our psyche, our little hidden memories, like going into a cave and it's completely dark. Looking at what are your strengths, what are the things that you can bring with you into this journey to look at. People call them issues, but the reason I like to identify it as resistance is because in the world of creating what we want in our lives, there's really only getting things out of our way so we can have what's coming into our life. That is why it's so important to me to identify it as not like an issue or a problem, but where's the resistance and what the resistance then can teach us. So when we identify an area that you're really strong in, we know that we can go into a conversation about where resistance might be difficult. What is an issue that you really are pushing against right now and that you would really like to change? And usually people don't have to look too far for a problem that wants addressed. Your problems will find you, I promise. They're reliable like that.
Written across your forehead, huh?
Yes. And so if we want to take a specific topic, would you like to choose something today that would be worth your time and your energy?
I think my resistance is still mostly in the financial topic, especially since I've shifted out of the career.
So right away, what we want to do is explore what actually is that resistance representing. What is it for? Because we build things into our lives to help us. The mind works in a way that its job is to keep you alive and safe. So it collects all the things that you bring it, and it sorts, stores, and files accordingly about keeping you alive and safe. So it's really important that we recognize that, because the mind holds history, not possibility. Part of us that holds possibility is the one that can access beyond the mind. That's where possibility lies. So we know when we're having a limited experience that we're in the mind, because when we are in possibility, we've accessed the part that is outside and beyond, and it's something we haven't yet experienced. The mind is going to try to file you back in and say, but here's how we get down the road safely, and this is the road we're going to take. And that's what it tries to operate us as. So for you specifically, the experience for you growing up was, it was best to have a stable track. And how you do that is you go to college, you get a job that you know what your income's going to be, you know that you can have that income. So what that created for you, we want to first identify what all did that create for you?
I believe it created the identity of being the follower more so than leading my life. And it all came from the childhood where I've seen people struggle with money and trying to make ends meet. And I believe I decided at a very young age that for me, it would be best to choose the career route. And that was while I was growing up in Ukraine. At the time, I had no idea I was going to end up in the States with different career opportunities than back home. But still, it presets my whole life and the outcome up until this point of my life. And I feel like there's a gap somewhere between the preconditioning and the awareness and actually aligning those.
Okay. So what's really cool about this, Irina, is that you witnessed instability, and your words are that you have been a follower, but actually what I'm observing is that you were a leader in your family. You didn't follow the instability route. You went into a place of decision that you were going to lead with stability. So just give yourself some love on that, and how important that was for you, and the way that you designed your life so that you could break that pattern of feeling so much unsurety and build into it a lot of known. You grew up with a lot of unknowns. You witnessed a lot of struggle because there were so many uncertainties, it sounds like. So what's interesting is that when you have the perspective that you were leading, what you get to do is you get to bring that recognition with you into a new light, to see it a new way. What's beautiful about that is that you recognize that you already have leader in you. Just take a minute and let that land right here. Yeah. It shifts your frequency.
I never thought about it how you described it. Somewhere over here, I was being the leader. I just didn't trace it as far back as my childhood.
Right. So what's really sweet about that is that research shows that people are more compassionate, more cooperative, and more willing to collaborate when they understand. I've been a mediator with high conflict in many different areas for over 25 years. So I know the power of deepening that state of understanding until it lands 100%. And you can't get 80% and you can't get 90%. You got to get on it. When it lands there, that's when we know we're on a really important precision point. And precision is important. It's really this paradoxical thing. We've got to understand the general way in which our system works. So the generalization is really important to understand the way the whole factory works. But then when you get down to an issue, you go in where that one little piece is in the system so that everything can start operating again. So what we know is that the mind records things a certain way, it develops patterns a certain way for a certain reason. But when we can zoom out and get more perspective and bring in this bigger understanding about why we've got this system operating this way, and we identify that with understanding, the whole system goes, well, will you look at that? You can feel your system going into a yes, like Literally, if you think, I'd like to bring in new dreams, new finances, new money. Yes, but it's resisting that. And then it locks in and it's like, yes. And then it opens. It's like, what is that resistance there for? What is it trying to do for you? What is it trying to show you? What need is it meeting? And then when it starts to meet more and more resistance, what actually is coming in for you is this sense of like something wants to change. That's what that tells us. There's so much resistance. Something needs to shift in order for something to come. And so the allowance of that exploration, I call it Christiism, but it's undefended curiosity. And that undefended curiosity allows us to explore things in this new, open way of seeing, to hear from a different lens, to understand from a different angle, to see from a different place.